up there in lights. Okay, I'm David Baer, and this is our conversation all about sales copy. I called this Sales Copy Primer or Sales Copy 101. And then what I did was I started adding so much content to the slide deck that you're about to see that I realized that and I was having a lot of difficulty editing myself. But I realized that there's actually a lot of pretty advanced stuff in here that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to introduce you to sales copy and a perspective on getting your message out there and in a persuasive and effective way. And if you're already familiar with it, hopefully I will introduce you to some additional concepts, shortcuts, things that might help you step up in your copy as well. So I'm just going to wait a moment or two before we jump into the actual presentation. I should, yeah, okay, good. Let's go ahead and grab that, and then we will get going here. So let's add that into the screen. Let's see if that works a little bit better. How about that? And we can get rid of my name. You don't need to know who I am anymore. Anyway, this is Sales Copy Crash Course, and what I think we're going to be doing today is covering, as I said, a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to be as concise as possible. If you have questions along the way, I encourage you, please, to jump in and ask. If it's something that's relevant, I will make sure to answer it then. If not, I will try to come back to it at the end of the presentation. Now, when I'm talking about sales copy, what I'm referring to can cover a whole gamut of things. And so you'll see some examples, then you'll say, well, I don't do that kind of, copywriting, or I don't do that kind of advertising or promotion in my business. Well, think about it in a much broader context. So what I'm going to show you really has applications in everything from sales letters, ads on your website, like a landing page, and I'll show you some of those, direct mail, email campaigns, video sales letters, could be any number of other things, display ads, and so on. And so don't get caught up on, well, that's not how we do things in my business. I think you're going to find that there's applications for almost everything that we talk about here in your business, or ways that you ought to consider doing things once you kind of get your mind opened up to these concepts. All right, so let's dive in. Let's see, okay, we are live. So what does great sales copy have in common with Hollywood movies? I think I'm actually going to jump out of here just so that I'm not distracting you. Okay, there we go. So what does great sales copy have in common with Hollywood movies? Now, this is a rhetorical question. If you want to jump in and guess, go ahead, feel free. But I'm gonna give you my answer right now. And there's two things that I came up with. Although, frankly, it could be any number of things. The two things that I thought of were, number one, believability. Right? You have to, even it's the most fantastic story in terms of, it's not plausible. You need to believe it and care about it so much that you are you're with it until the end. Now, there are, of course, some Hollywood movies that don't achieve that, and there's plenty of copywriting that doesn't achieve that as well. But believability is a real important factor when it comes to both Hollywood films and copywriting. But the one that I think is even more important and more germane to what we're going to be talking about today is this concept of, and let me jump back over here. Okay, yeah. This concept of formulas. And Hollywood, if you look at any major motion picture out there, has a formula that you see over and over and over again. And the formula is this thing that we know as the hero's journey. And I'm not going to take you through the hero's journey today. Perhaps we'll do a subsequent training on this topic. But what I do want to cover here is the idea that there is a process by which films are made and followed in order to make sure that you cover all of the emotional and plot point necessities in order to get the audience to follow along and to stay with you throughout the telling of that story. And so that's really what I wanted to highlight here, because what we're going to be talking about as we move ahead is the importance of and the characteristics of formula in copywriting. So why don't we dive into that? Let's talk a bit about copywriting formulas. And there isn't just one single formula out there. In fact, there are many, many different formulas. I'm going to share with you just a handful of them right now. The first one is a very simple one, the before, after, bridge formula. So this is a formula where basically you talk about what things were like before your product or solution was introduced, the result after somebody used or engaged with your product or solution, and the bridge, the thing that got them there, which is the product or solution that you're trying to sell, right? So it's a very simple, straightforward formula. Here's another formula: problem, agitate, solve, right? So this is really speaking to somebody who has an issue that they need to resolve. And so maybe it's somebody who, a very common example in copywriting is, let's talk about weight loss products or weight loss training or weight loss diet programs, et cetera, right? So weight loss, I feel, like I need to lose weight. And so then you agitate the problem by talking about all of the challenges that somebody might have who feels as if they need to lose weight. Their clothes aren't fitting. They have, personal self-doubt about their appearance, et cetera, and then you solve it. So you identify a problem, then you agitate that problem and make them feel really emotionally engaged to that problem, and then you present your solution. Right, here's another formula. This is a very famous formula. You're going to find this all over the place. It's known as AIDA: attention, interest, desire, and action. And I think for just to sort of stay on task here, I'm not going to get into detail on each and every one of these, but I wanted you to sort of see that there are various formulas. So let me just introduce a few more. Features, advantages, and benefits. Right. So this would be here's a bunch of the features that we offer in our solution, and here are those advantages of those features over not having those features or over other competitors' features. And here are the benefits that you, as the prospect or buyer of the thing that we're selling, can get if you make this investment today, right? So that's another copywriting formula. These last two are not as much formulas as things that a lot of copywriters like to keep track of to make sure that they are including them. So there's the 4 C's and the 4 U's. The 4 C's being clear, concise, compelling, and credible. Now, credibility, that harkens back to what I was talking about with believability, right? In order to be believable, you kind of got to be credible. And then the 4 U's: useful, urgent, unique, and ultra specific. Ultra specific is going to tie into the first point on my next slide. So why don't we jump over there? Let's talk about a few copywriting tips. And here is a biggie. And this is one that if you have ever sat in on a training that either Ken or I have done, or you have done a consultation with Ken, you'll know that one of the things that we really want our clients to try to do, and we've done this in our own business, is identify a single target to whom you are marketing. Right? Ultra specificity is going to resonate so much more than if you are broad and general. Right? So if you're a business who can help anybody and everybody, and you try to advertise or market to anybody and everybody, nobody's going to hear what you have to say. Whereas in our business, we do the overwhelming amount of marketing directly to financial advisors. We work with financial advisors and we market to financial advisors. Now, that doesn't preclude us from having other people come to our business and say, hey, I know you guys work with financial advisors, but I'm a chiropractor. Can you help me out too? So even though you're ultra specific in who you're targeting, you're still going to attract people to your business. One problem, one solution. This is one that I think a lot of clients hear me talk about a great deal. Which is, again, very similar to the first point. the more specific you can be in what you are talking about in your marketing, right? So remember that example of problem, agitate, solve. If you speak about 5 or 10 or 20 different problems that are all related, you muddy your message and you get people lost in their journey from the introduction of, I got a solution to this thing that you're dealing with. And then when you introduce too many things, it gets convoluted and confusing. So one problem, one solution. Another copywriting tip: when you're writing, write to one person. I catch myself all the time when I am recording videos talking to all of you guys, or that sort of thing. But I have to then stop and step back and usually reshoot that little bit of the video and remind myself that I need to speak to you as an individual. Now, if you hear me talking to you as an individual, it's going to resonate a heck of a lot more than if I was talking to, hey, everybody in this group, because you don't feel as if I am being as personable in the way that I am addressing you. Well, that's very much the same in written content, video content, and a message is going to resonate so much more with somebody when they feel as if it is specifically been developed for them. Use simple language and avoid jargon. I found this out the hard way pretty early on when I was trying to impress people with the things that I had learned about whatever the discipline was that I was teaching on. I teach people about wine, and I like to talk about weird things related to wine. And I realized that I'm losing people. As my wife likes to say, their eyes were glazing over as I was talking about whatever the particular subject was. And I realized that a good amount of it was because I was using jargon specific to that industry, and it had no way to connect, or they had no way to connect with what I was talking about. And so the simpler the language, the better. There's a copywriting rule, and I've heard all kinds of different numbers here, but to try to write to a 4th or 5th or 6th grade level so that really anybody can easily understand what you're trying to talk about. And so one thing that I try very much to do in my copywriting is to go through and see if there are words that somebody might be challenged by or get hung up on, which will stop them from continuing reading because they're stuck on, what does that word mean? And get that that sentence revised, or if I absolutely have to use that word, that I make a point of going back and defining what that word is at that very moment to help them continue to advance through the piece of copy. Finally, write like you speak. And this is one that I think is a challenge for a lot of people, because we want to write the way we learn to write in our high school English class. And we want to use proper grammar, and we want to make sure that technically all of the writing is correct. But when you do that, you also disconnect from your readers. And so writing conversationally, particularly when you are telling stories, is a much more effective way to build a piece of sales content. All right, let's jump on to why people buy. People buy for all sorts of reasons. We got to remember, they buy to make money, to save time, to save effort, to improve their health, or to increase pleasure. And so when we are writing our copy, we want to keep this stuff in mind. It is always about them. It is not about you. And we want to figure out what that motivator is that is going to get them from initially being engaged, right? They get the attention, or you get their attention, because they have an interest in addressing one of these things. And there are more. This is an abbreviated list. But they're interested in addressing one of these things, and then you got to keep them interested in continuing to get through the copy, whether, again, it's a letter, it's a video, it's an email, so that you can get them to say, yeah, I really want to save time on this task, or I really want to improve my health in this area, and then you show them the solution. Oh, and there was one more. Eliminate pain. I missed that one. All right, one more important copywriting tip. Never, never, ever, ever start from a blank page. And here's what I mean by that. There is so much great copy out there that you can take advantage of to guide you through the process. And we're going to talk a lot more about this approach in a little while. There was a great copywriter named Eugene Schwartz. He's got a book that's out of publication, but you can find it somewhere online. You know, you pay hundreds of dollars for a copy of it, called Breakthrough Advertising. And in it, he talks about one of his theories, which is that copy is not, in fact, written, but copy is assembled. And so understanding that really what we're going to be talking about over the next little while is how do you assemble copy that you can effectively position to make the sales, to create the sales message that you want to create. Hey, Ken, I can see you in the background, and if you want to jump in at any time, let me know. All right, so that is really a really important tip, because starting from a blank page when you're writing copy, writing a sales message, it can make the task that much harder and really something that you want to avoid. We're going to talk about how you can assemble copy next. Now, every bit of copy out there starts with a general conceit, a general idea, a general concept, something that in the copy world is known as the big idea. And I'm going to give you some examples of what a big idea might be. So it's maybe to accomplish the impossible, or it's the revelation of a secret that some, somebody who is a master at addressing this particular issue might have, and you're going to let them in on the secret, or some amazing discovery that you have, or just rationalizing that there's a reason for the offer. And I'll give you some examples of all of these with some classic copy. Here's a really famous ad. It was an ad for a correspondence music course. And this is the headline. The headline for it was, "They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play," right? And this is a concept of some amazing discovery that somebody had. They didn't think I could play the piano, but I could, and I fooled them. And guess what? You too you learn how to play the piano if you get this correspondence course that I got, right? So that's the idea behind this piece of copy. Here's another one, and this is another very famous one. This is actually an ad that ran for the Wall Street Journal for decades. I think it's like 30 some odd years, and it's the story of two guys whose lives started out pretty much the same. They went to college together. They were very, very similar, and at one point, they both went to work for the same company. One got a promotion into a management position, and the other one became the president of the company. And what was the difference? Well, the difference was the guy who became the president of the company read the Wall Street Journal, right? So that is another big idea, right? That there's people who start off in the same place, but this one little thing, the product that we happen to be selling, made all the difference in this one individual's life. Right, here's another one. I love this one. This is another famous headline. Actually, the entire piece of copy is a really famous one from a guy named John Carlton who wrote this. And this was for a golf training program. And the headline is just awesome, right? So it's above the headline, you see, want to slash strokes from your game almost overnight? Amazing secret. So that's the central conceit here. Amazing secret discovered by one-legged golfer adds 50 yards to your drive, eliminates hooks and slices, and can slash up to 10 strokes from your game almost overnight. So the hook, the big idea is that this guy who happens to have one leg and plays golf has this secret that you're going to find out as you read through the copy. Another great big idea. And finally, here's a big idea that's a reason for the offer idea. Now, this was a gimmick. This guy named Bill Glazer, who went on to become a very famous consultant and copywriter in his own regard. At this point in his career, he was the owner of his family's business in Maryland, a clothing store, menswear store called Gage Menswear. And at some point, they had some kind of flood. I can't remember. It wasn't really a major flood, but it was a good excuse for him to put together an ad campaign that he mailed to their best customers, right? They had from their database, they knew who their best customers were. Another lesson that Ken and I talk about a lot. And he sent out this letter and basically said, hey, look, we had this flood. He didn't tell them it wasn't a really big deal, but they had this flood. And it was an excuse for them to put everything on sale. And the gimmick is that basically what he did was he hand wrote the letter. And he says right here, so you see the headline, sometimes when times are tough, you've got to do some pretty drastic things. Dear Gage client and friend, I just got this very impulsive idea. I had to jump on it and print this handwritten note before I had a chance to give it to my typist and think it all out clearly, right? So the idea here is I was impulsive and you're going to benefit. And that is the reason for the offer that he then goes on to make. This is a great piece, and if you'd like, I'd be happy to share the rest of it with you at some point. Just ask me here in the group. All right. There are a lot of components to a standard piece of copy. And I'm going to go through a bunch of them now. We're not going to cover everyone in detail, but I just want to sort of give you a glimpse of what's involved. So here's some copywriting components. A pre-head or pre-headline, that's the little bit above the headline. The headline itself, something called deck copy, then the lead, then the introduction, then the body copy, then the product introduction. Or the writer introduction sometimes, bullets or bullet points, subheadlines, testimonials or proof, some other form of proof, the offer that you are making, and that is not necessarily the product that you're selling or the service that you're selling. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Price justification, bonus or bonuses if you have them, a guarantee, and we'll talk about the necessity for a guarantee, and the close, and then if it is a traditional sales letter, a postscript, PS. So there are a lot of pieces when it comes to building out traditional copy. Again, a lot of these things work in videos and email and even ads in print ads and publications as well. Let me give you some examples as we go through this. So here is an ad that we're going to be coming back to a lot over the course of this training. And this is an ad that I have written for a business opportunity for a tiny home manufacturer, basically, who's looking for people to invest in their business by becoming resellers and developers and things of their tiny homes, building out communities or selling them to people. So here's the pre-head that I wrote for serious and motivated builders and real estate entrepreneurs and investors only. Right, so that tells you, if you're not one of those people, stop reading right now. Then there's the headline. Now, the headline here is how to access acres of diamonds hiding in a tiny, in quotes, corner of the housing market. And that could be intriguing for some people who are already in the real estate space, who are looking for an opportunity, what is it, Ken, that you call it? The blue ocean, right? An opening to pursue that most other people in their industry are not pursuing. And so I am talking about this, I'm hinting at this thing, but I'm kind of, a little vague. What is he talking about? Acres of diamonds. I better read on. And then here's the deck copy. So this is kind of it's going to keep them salivating and wanting more before they even get into the content. You're about to discover a business model that's so simple, it's embarrassing. Yet 97% of real estate entrepreneurs won't see it, leaving boatloads of cash on the table for folks like you to grab. Read on to find out for yourself how this tiny housing secret can soon have you laughing all the way to the bank too. Right? So that is sort of expanding the idea of what they're about to discover. And then the lead. And the lead is basically getting them into what the story is that I'm about to tell them in the copy. So does that all make sense? And are there's questions, feedback, please go ahead and leave those in the comments, and I'm happy to address them. All right, headlines. Headlines are a critical piece of all of this, and we're going to talk a little bit about headlines right now. The headline is the thing that, and this could be in an email, it's the subject line. If you're sending direct mail, it's what is on the outside of the envelope. It's the thing that catches their attention that gets them to want to read on. So we're going to talk a little bit about headline formulas, because remember what we talked about before with Eugene Schwartz. You're assembling copy. You're not starting from scratch. So let's look at this. Here's a headline. Your lawyer doesn't want you to read this ad. Now you could take this headline and you can adapt it to your whatever, fill in the blank, doesn't want you to read this ad. Right? Or our competition doesn't want you to read this ad. So it's really just a good starting point to get a sense of, is this going to fit the thing that I'm trying to put together? Another headline formula. A waxless, shaveless, creamless, safe, and painless way to remove that unwanted hair. Right? So here's the formula. The blank way to blank. Very, very simple, but it's a formula that you can take and use for whatever you are offering, your product or service. All right, I'm going to give you one final one, and then we will move on from headlines. So here's a formula. This is one that I thought of today, given some of the news. So financial secrets the Wall Street banks and their federal government lackeys don't want you to know about. I was waiting for the laugh from the crowds there, but I didn't get it. So here's the basic formula. Blank secrets the blank don't want you to know about. Right? So you can take that and adapt it to pretty much any situation, and it's going to be something that will intrigue. Now, where do you find great headlines like this? Well, one of my very favorite places to find headlines, and you can do this in whatever way you like. You can do it in the privacy of your home, just going to the website, or you can or you can maybe do it while you're in the checkout line at the grocery store. Take a look at things like the National Enquirer. Look at those headlines. Those are very highly paid headline writers at that publication, and there's a good reason. It's because they know how to get people's attention. There's headlines everywhere, and one thing that I highly recommend you do, and we'll talk about this more. In fact, this was one of the things that I said to you in one of the promotional emails to attend this, is to pay attention to your junk mail. Actually start collecting it. Go through it. There's a lot of great stuff in there, and if you don't subscribe to things that you're not on email lists from your competitors, that's another great way to discover some great headlines. All right, let's jump on to introduction. So I talked about product introduction, but also who is delivering this message. So there's the introduction, the who am I and why should you listen to me introduction. There's the introduction of how I became or accidentally discovered or overcame whatever it is I'm about to tell you about. And then there's finally, for a lot of businesses who say, well, this didn't actually happen to me. Well, you can tell somebody else's story too. So how someone else became or discovered or overcame something. But it's useful to give a certain degree of legitimacy to what you're advertising by using a real personal and personable connection to what you're about to tell them. So let's take a look at some of that. Actually, we're going to jump to the subhead, and then we'll find some examples of what I just talked about in a moment. So subheads are really useful tools for people who are not reading every single word. And that's the way most of us actually read. Subheadlines are for people who scan content to pick up on, is this really for me? Is this worth my time to read? Or I just want to know what it is that you're selling, or what the price is, or etc. And so by using subheadlines, you're basically breaking up the copy to make it scannable and more readable, but also in quick, small bites. So again, this is back to the example I was giving of the tiny home company. The subheadline here is the master key to building a large fortune. And then we get into the body copy. And in the body copy, from the headline, you may recall I talked about something called acres of diamonds. And people may read that and be scratching their head. What's this guy talking about? Well, I then get into a story, a famous story about how acres of diamonds existed on this property that this farmer owned, and yet he went all over the world searching for diamonds when they actually existed right there on his own property. And I then relate that back to the point that I'm trying to make in this piece of copy about you have an opportunity that's sitting right in front of you. Come work with us, and make a fortune in the tiny home industry. Okay. Then we talk about product introduction. So this is a different product that I'm showing an example of. This is my email campaign mastery course. And at the point in the sales letter where I introduce the product, I explain what it is. Now, what I then go on to do, and you'll see this in a moment, is actually make the offer for the product. But first I say, introducing this solution to the problem or opportunity or whatever it is that I've just been talking about. And then the use of bullet points are a really great way to sort of break out individual features and benefits. The key being benefits more than features, benefits of the thing that you are offering for sale. We then want to, here's some other examples. So this is back to the tiny homes thing. And so sub-headlines and more bullets, just so you can sort of see how it's working here. The use of testimonials or some form of proof. And you see this all over the place. Down in the bottom right, this is probably the one that most of us are seeing most often these days, which is if you go to Amazon, you see, how many people have rated something and how many stars has it gotten rated. Well, that is proof, social proof that people like or dislike something. In this case, we want them to like, show proof that they like what we have and that they benefited from what we are selling. Just above that is this Casper mattresses ad this is actually from their webpage where they have happy customers who have posted to Instagram their affinity for Casper. And then off to the left, a very traditional weight loss or diet, before and after poses for people who have used the product or the system. I can't even remember where I took the screenshot from. So those are some examples of how you can use proof or testimonials in your copy. And really, what is the importance of this is that it is helping people see that it works for other people. And remember, we talked about being very targeted in your message, so other people just like them. And that's a key to the success of proof, right? If you were selling something to emergency room nurses and you had a whole bunch of testimonials from construction workers, they might look at that and go, well, it worked for them, but I don't see any emergency room nurses on here, so I may not buy this thing, right? That's the importance of the relevance of the testimonials, is getting as tightly focused as you possibly can on who you're targeting and then reflecting that in the proof or testimonials. All right, then we get to the offer. Now, the offer is not simply the product. The offer is how you package the product. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but here's two examples. This is, again, my email campaign mastery course, and I ask the question. So, somebody gets to this point, they're kind of interested. So what exactly is included inside of email campaign mastery? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's kind of, the conversational tone here in the copy. When you order now, you'll receive the following 13 sets of emails with a 100 plus fill-in-the-blank email templates. That's copy I got to fix. That A is superfluous in that sentence. It's always good to do these presentations because you always pick up on things that need to be tightened up. Anyway, I then have more bullet points for each one of the sections of the product. So I break it down in great detail what is in this program. All right, here's another one for my Sales Copy Simplified course. And here's the offer. Let's take a look at everything you get inside this exciting package when you order today. And then, again, I sort of break down all the modules of the program and what they're going to see inside. So it's not simply, I have a copywriting course. Would you like to buy it? Right? It's much more detailed so that people have a sense of not only what's in there, but how they're going to benefit from all of the components in there. All right, let's jump to price justification, because one of the worst things you could be doing in your business, and one of the most challenging things to do in any business, is to compete solely on price. Most of us as businesses do not have enough money to invest in advertising to be able to compete with the low price leader in our category. And therefore, you really need to figure out, how do you charge what you need to be charging, charge what you're worth, charge for the right value that you're delivering, but then how do you justify it? And so here's some of the copy that I have for my email campaign mastery program. And the question, is, how much is my investment? I like the word investment. So then I just talk about, well, let's look at some of the ways that you might be spending your time or money in order to achieve what this product is going to deliver to you. And so I'm rationalizing that the investment of $97 is totally worth it, because how much time has that just saved you, and how much is your time worth really, etc. So that's just an example of how you can justify price. All right, bonuses. Bonuses are something that I think too few of us remember to utilize as a piece of leverage in selling. And very often it might be something that you're already delivering as part of the thing you're selling, your service, your product, whatever, that you could break out, separate out, and highlight as a special extra feature that they get when they buy right now. So here we go. This is, again, the Sales Copy Simplified program. Order now, and you also get these 5 bonus tools, tips, and tricks to create better copy faster and easier than ever before. And then I go into detail, as much detail as I did about the program itself, as on the particular bonus features and benefits. Guarantee. Now, guarantees are something that I think, again, a lot of businesses don't even address. They avoid completely. And I think that there is an opportunity here that's being missed. You do not have to necessarily guarantee that they're going to get their money back. You can guarantee lots of things. So this was an old Zippo lighter ad. Santa Claus slipped this Zippo into a Christmas stocking in 1932. It still works today. If any Zippo ever fails to work, we'll fix it free. That's their guarantee. Now, how many people are actually taking them up on that? Right? It's a cheap product. You can toss it out. You can buy a new one. Most people are never going to take advantage of that. But they ran this in all of their space ads, their display ads in printed materials back. I think this was like probably in the 1950s. Here's a guarantee from LifeLock. If you become a victim of identity theft while you are a LifeLock member, we will spend up to $1 million, right? Here's the catch. Up to $1 million to hire experts, lawyers, and investigators, consultants, and whoever else it takes to help you your recovery. And so this is instilling confidence in the buyer. But as you can see, there's a couple of asterisks next to the guarantee. There's probably some footnotes, and they may, have these people in-house. Maybe it's, already a part of their regular, their regular service, their regular employees, et cetera, who are offering this. Here's the guarantee that I used in one of my in the Sales Copy Simplified program. It looks like, and so you can see it just flows right into this in the copy, and that's why I'm offering you this money back guarantee. Here's my ironclad 100% money back guarantee. I'm so sure that you're going to absolutely love this product that I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. If you order today and you get instant access to everything for a full 30 days to review all the materials. If you're not absolutely thrilled for any reason, if this package doesn't help you create better sales letters, then all you have to do is contact me within 30 days for a prompt and cheerful refund. Right? I've never gotten anybody who's asked me for a refund after buying this. So it's a very, very easy for me to offer that guarantee, particularly because I say, if this package doesn't help you create better sales letters, and I know full well that it's going to, and they do too, they may not take advantage of that, but Anyway, you get the point. Here is one of my absolute favorite guarantees that I've ever come across. This is for a self-defense video course that was promoted back in the late 80s, early 90s, I think. And it's basically how to defend yourself against people who are coming at you with weapons. Once you have thoroughly studied these videotapes and practiced the techniques, I guarantee no one will ever be able to defeat you in life-threatening situations where any type of weapon is involved, and when you apply the techniques correctly. If they do, I'll immediately refund your full purchase price, regardless of how long ago you bought this program. Now, the irony is, of course, if they if they're attacked in a life-threatening situation by somebody who has a weapon and they apply the techniques correctly, well, they're going to survive, one would hope. And if they don't survive, they're not going to be around to ask for their money back in the first place. I love this. Love this piece. Anyway, you kind of see how guarantees can be incredibly useful at driving the sale forward. All right, here's the close. So at the end of any sales piece, you got to get them to move forward, right? So you don't simply say, "All right, there I go. There you go. There's the thing that I have," and just leave it hanging there. The thing you need to do is go in for the close. Now, if this is a written piece, all I said in this promotion, which is getting people to work with the tiny house company, the next step is to decide if we're a fit for each other. And then I tell them what they need to do, which is fill out a form, and then we'll schedule a call if they seem like they're a good fit. Here's a few examples of formulas that you can use for a close. So here's the what are you waiting for close. So the only thing standing between you and the benefit that you want, or that you deserve, is, and then the result that your product can give them. So again, it's just a very clear formula. Here's another formula. We've come to a crossroads close. So basically, you're telling them, okay, you have this choice or you have that choice. Which one are you going to choose? If you want to take control of your life, choose what we're offering now. And then finally, there's the if-then close, and there's many, many other close formulas. If you're finished with, putting up with the annoyance of having to whatever it is, and you're ready to start doing things the right way, then this is it. Right. So those are some examples of various closes that you might have. All right, now I'm going to give you a handful of shortcuts that might help simplify and make this process easier. I subscribe to a lot of other marketers' email lists so that I have the ability to see what other people are doing. And so I have basically a swipe file, a file in my email inbox. This is a fictitious person. I just set up a separate Gmail account so that I could collect all this stuff. But I can go in at any point and type something in. So this is financial copy. You can see I typed financial in the top there, and then I can look through things that might inspire my copy, or things where I can swipe their use of something and then model it. I don't steal it. I model it. I use the structure of it. I use the idea behind it to then craft or put in place my own thing. There's a great website called swiped.co where this guy's collected a lot of famous copy pieces, ads, sales letters, etc. that I highly recommend you check out if you want to explore some of this further. There's a great headline maker that I use occasionally. It's kind of a little tool. It's called Fresh Title. I promote it, and you can check out the link at the bottom of the slide if you want to grab it through my affiliate link. But basically what you do is you type in a keyword or a subject, a main subject for whatever the headline is, and it'll spit back like hundreds or thousands of variations of things, of titles that you might use. And these are great not just for headlines, but also for subheads, for bullet points, etc., and inspiration for your copy piece in general. This is a tool that I really enjoy using. And then, of course, there's my Sales Copy Simplified, which you can find at the URL at the bottom of the screen as well. So that's pretty much it. I think let's jump open for Q&A if you want. Hey, why don't you invite Ken in here? And I think we can probably, I'll come back on screen as well, and we can probably get rid of this thing. There we go. Hey, Ken, how's it going?
I need a haircut.
I think so many of us do these days. Anyway, I'm going to take a sip of my beverage here while you go ahead and share some of your thoughts on what I've just been talking about.
There was so much good stuff there. I think the thing that I would love to hear you chat a little bit more about, or that you and I can chat a little bit more about, is you mentioned some techniques at the very beginning, methods, if you will. How does one know when they should apply those? And I think that this could go for everything from closes to other things. How do you know, or how do you decide, hey, this is the method I'm going to be using in this particular setup, or in this particular sales letter or email copy, etc.?
So you're talking about like the different formulas that I was whether it's
not just that, but you have closes, different styles, whether it's just straight headline or headline subheadline. How are you making, like walk us through your headspace when you're saying, I'm going to use this style and I'm going to use this method, I'm going to use this close? Like, what informs all of that?
Okay. Well, there's a few things. So first of all, it's what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and who you are.
Okay.
Right. All of those things are going to have a certain degree of influence on how you are presenting what you're presenting. Right. What sort of language is appropriate to be using to speak to these people, and therefore, are you going to be using a more aggressive or a more gentle approach? In terms of like which of the formulas, really, you can pick any of them and they would work for you. So just understanding, how the formulas might work. Some headline formulas might fit better for the tone of what you're trying to say than others, right? So, and sometimes just swapping out individual words is going to change the tone of the entire headline or subheadline or little bit of content. So it's not as much what I'm using, but figuring out, once I have those pieces together, do they fit well together? And then I have lots of shortcuts. So hold on a second. Here's one of the many books that I have. It's called Words That Sell. And basically, it's just a bunch of words that are gonna help me. It's a thesaurus basically. And it helps me fill in a lot of the blanks. Or when I'm saying like, I don't know that this word is really conveying it the way that I want to convey it. What else can I say? I got another one over here, which is, these are books that just sit here on my desk. Actually, they were in our office before, but now they're here on my desk. This is Matt Basak's Marketing Sidekick, and again, it's just tons and tons of swipes, basically. Bits of content, again, more words that I might go in to find, what fits best here based on who I am, how I'm selling, and who I'm selling to.
Okay. So can we use your tiny house example?
Okay.
And I want people to kind of get from you what I think is something that I've not heard a lot of copywriters talk about, which is, how do you actually make that decision?
So,
like walk through what's going in your head up here, because I hear what you're saying, in that I can take any of these methods and these methods all work.
Yeah. Yes.
But what separates one copywriter from another is fundamentally the decisions they're making. And so, do you have
that helps? Yeah, but here's the key, and you and I both know that out of the gate, I don't know that it's going to work.
Okay.
All right, so it's an assumption that this thing is going to be effective. I don't know how effective, and I don't know how effective it's going to be compared to something else out there. So I got to just try it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's key number one, is that you have to go into things with the acceptance that maybe this isn't going to work as well as something else could work.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this, and then we'll talk about the tiny house thing. In the copywriting world, there are what are known as controls. They are the ads that are effective and running and have produced the best outcome for a particular product or service. And then there are the things that are constantly being tested to beat that control. And where this happens probably more than any place else is in the financial publishing space. This is not the financial advisors like you and I work with, but this is the newsletters that people who are DIY investors might subscribe to. And the sales letters for all of these things, they're selling a subscription. But you can't sell a subscription by selling the subscription. So what they do is they make a sales letter all about the bonus that they're offering. Hey, you're gonna get this book or this special report for free when you subscribe to this thing, right? And so there are lots of tests of trying to beat the control for getting people signed up to the newsletter by using that technique. And there's tons of copywriters who are competing for that. So now back to the tiny house thing.
Yeah,
I had to think, okay, I'm looking to speak to a certain type of individual who is an entrepreneurial mind, who already is familiar to a certain extent with the world of tiny houses and doesn't look down on them.
okay.
And is a little bit and is entrepreneurial, which means that they're interested in making money, right? And how do I appeal to them in a certain way? Well, what's a great parable or a great story that I can use to talk about how this is an opportunity right in front of you? So I knew that I was going to use that piece, the Acres of Diamonds story, and storytelling is incredibly effective. And then how could I wrap the idea of this is right in front of all these people in your industry, and yet most of them are missing. They're not seeing it at all. And so again, I'm tapping into somebody's it's not sense of pride, but competitive nature, right?
Okay.
Hey, I'm gonna make all this money, and these other guys who are screwing around with the more traditional approach to making money in the real estate business, they're not even seeing this, right? I got in on a little secret. So those are all the things that I wanted to tap into. And so what I then did was I went out and I looked for pieces that were structured in a way that they spoke to a similar audience, not necessarily real estate investors, but an audience with a similar desire. And so I basically took an existing. I started with an existing piece of copy. I don't even remember what it was selling. It was selling. It could have been an online course. It could have been who knows. I don't even remember. And I started by taking that, ripping it apart, and putting my stuff into it. And then there were sections that just didn't fit what I was doing. And so I needed to patch in other things in those sections as I got further down. And the piece that I originally was basing this on, the swipe that I was using, was selling a product where they had to buy now. My thing was getting them to request a phone call with us, right? So I had to completely get rid of that and replace it with other stuff. So that was sort of the process that I went through. I'm not sure that I've given you as much juicy material as you're looking for, but I mean, that's sort of in general. It was just trial and error until all the pieces fit.
Okay. Well, no, I think that's great, and the idea is you don't know what's going to work. How do you start testing what's going to work? Because it sounds like what you said was, I'm going to use a target market. I'm going to get into that space of what impacts that person. If I were them, I would respond to, right? And then you start watching the numbers.
Yeah. So with using the tiny house one as an example, I'm hosting that on Convertri, and Convertri allows me to do a split test of landing pages. So I'm running ads to it.
Okay.
And I have two different landing pages. One which is a completely different approach, which is not working nearly as well as this one.
Okay.
And so at some point I got, I'm a little lazy, but I got to swap that other one out and see if I can test something else as another split test.
Okay.
But I mean, that's kind of the simple thing is, just testing one thing at a time. Right. So in that case, I'm testing a traditional landing page, which really doesn't tell a story. It has a kind of, mouth-watering headline. and then it gets into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of what the business opportunity is. Whereas this one has a much more emotional structure to it.
Okay. And are you always using that more emotional tool, or or is you,
I'm not always, and here's the thing, um, and you know this full well. People buy based on emotional reasons,
Mhm,
and then they justify their purchase based on logic.
mhm.
And so using emotion is highly effective. Now, there's some places where I haven't used it because maybe a client is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and then maybe I can sneak in a split test to something where they'll allow me to. Or in our business where we're working with financial advisors who are highly regulated and very conservative, they would prefer not to use anything that it tugs on emotional heartstrings. But it is probably smarter to engage some form of emotion than not.
And how are you then choosing which close or what closing method that you put onto this?
Well,
Okay.
the close again. It depends on what it is you're selling, how much is included in it. Maybe it's been a really long sales letter, and you need to remind them of the highlights. So the close really is more a practical device for segueing into the okay. Now it's time to buy. So the which one am I using is really going to be based a lot on just the context of where they've been and where they need to get to next. And again, there are, I was going to say dozens and dozens, but probably hundreds and hundreds of different options there. And so I'm not necessarily going to pick the right one. I'm going to pick from the ones that I look through and I go, oh, here's one that can work, and then I'll slot it in.
Gotcha. Do
I
you
mean, it is really, you do not need to be a great writer to be effective at copywriting. What you need to do is be a student of human psychology,
mm,
and to understand how to effectively communicate an idea in a clear, the four C's, I mean, clear and concise. Um, Clear and concise. You hear me say clear and concise all the time.
yeah.
Uh, a clear and concise way that will get somebody to take action.
Okay. And does this does this stop at the sales letter, or does it go beyond this to
Well, okay. I
oh,
mean, again, this is a context question,
right.
but it is not going to stop at the sales letter, because if you loop them in through the sales letter, and it depends on what you're trying to do. So, maybe it's just lead generation. If this is a sales piece to generate a lead, and then you use a completely different tone in your communication once you've gotten that lead, well,
Mhm.
there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
So you need to follow through on what it is you start with. If you're starting with a big idea, you need to carry that big idea, or be able to easily or logically segue from that big idea into the thing that you're trying to ultimately sell. So I think that's where a lot of businesses screw things up, is that they'll hire a copywriter to write some great piece of material, and then get somebody to go behind the curtain, and once they're behind the curtain, it's like a bait and switch.
Mm.
And you need to avoid that. I mean, you need to avoid that uh, when it's when you're risking losing that person, either because they haven't bought yet, or because the thing that you're selling them isn't what was promised in the original sales piece.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I really appreciated kind of all that you had to present today.
Yeah, Excellent. Well, I'm happy to come back with more on the subject of copywriting and marketing, communication, content. If people have questions, don't hesitate to add them here to this post. And I look forward to engaging with the group further on the subject. As I hope you could tell from my delivery here, it's a subject I enjoy and I'm pretty darn passionate about. So thanks everybody for your time today, and we will be back next Tuesday with another topic. So thanks, Ken, and to all of our fellow growth-focused business owners out there. All right, take care now.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye.